Hello everyone. Welcome to STEMPod, brought to you by Vadhwani AI and sponsored by USAID, a series to celebrate the amazing contributions of women in STEM and beyond. I am Dr. Sneha Nikam from Vadhwani AI and your host for today. In this session, we would be diving deep into the amazing world of artificial intelligence in healthcare along with our phenomenal guest, Anaita Singh. Anaita is from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and has over a decade of experience in digital public healthcare. Join us for a discussion on how AI could be leveraged to empower healthcare workers and improve the health of women. But before we dive deep, let's take a moment to give a shout out to our sponsors, USAID. USAID has been partnering with India over the several last decades for working on various global development priorities. Together, they have been trying and testing various models and high impact solutions for addressing the various challenges in healthcare and other domains across the globe. USAID is making sure that the cutting edge solutions are inclusive of all the identities, respecting the various diversities. Hi, Anaita. Welcome.
Hi, Sneha. Thanks so much for the introduction and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Anaita. Anaita, you have been working meticulously towards supporting technology innovations in healthcare. Both our organizations have been striving towards utilizing technologies for creating a positive impact on the health of millions of people. So, in your opinion, Anaita, do you think that technology innovations like artificial intelligence can be game changers for public health? What are your thoughts? And also, I would like to hear from you as to how technology innovations could be utilized for creating a positive impact on women's health needs.
Well, thank you for that question. I think it's a pretty loaded question. And I feel like we're only getting started on AI, but it's rapidly growing, especially in the Indian context, both in the public and the private sector.
Right.
As you mentioned, I think I'd be cautiously optimistic when we talk about it in health. There are a lot of innovations that are coming in from a more upstream perspective, hopefully, which will also strengthen much more of the primary healthcare ecosystem in the Indian context as well, slowly. There is work happening also on the non invasive hemoglobin side. But I think what's really important here is context
Right.
and the data sets around it.
Right.
If we are to really represent and use it for women or the Indian specific context, we can't just think about solutions that are ready made and tailor made, right?
Totally.
They will need to be and when I say tailor made, I don't specifically mean in a particular state, but even within that, right? There is so much cultural context that comes in. So when we design digital solutions, if I take a step back, a lot of times we think about enumeration in a particular community, then having beneficiary segmentation based on age, then marital status, eligible couples, pregnant women, etc. But what about the cultural norms which are a little different from this?
Exactly.
Where, for example, marriage is still a very fluid concept.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you think about designing for that, where you will still have people coming in, but you'll end up excluding them if your data sets are not informing that,
Right.
the right questions are not asked, and your algorithms are not reflecting it. So I think a lot of what we'll need to do is thinking about our country context. And I think the government is taking a lot of steps in that direction. And I think they've also used AI during the pandemic very extensively. So the guidelines that were released on telemedicine, the eSanjeevani National Telemedicine Platform, which has been rolled out across the entire state, it uses an AI-enabled solution so that it can help with the doctors on early diagnosis, symptom checks, etc. And for patients as well to be able to then reach and access better care, much more affordable care, and also connect with specialized doctors.
Exactly.
I think that goes a long way. And there is also on the TB side, there is a TB cough solution. I think our team helped develop, and it's being used in one of the northeastern states.
Right.
And I think it's great for early screening and testing. I think those are the kind of things which are context specific. I think there is demand for that. But I would be very cautious of how we think about it when it comes to health. And while being really optimistic that there are certain initial, quick wins that we can actually think about, which can actually benefit the health workforce as well.
So, and I think also our healthcare systems, they are majorly driven by women leaders, like we have our frontline leaders like the Ashas, the ANMs, the Anganwadi workers at the community level,
Yeah.
and the nurses in the hospital settings. So, how do you think we can leverage this technology to empower our frontline workers?
Yeah.
If any examples you could give us on that.
Yeah. No, thank you for that question, Sneha. I think it takes me back into time a little bit. About 6-7 years back, I was working in one of the states, and there we were starting out to roll out digital solutions for health frontline workers. The government of India has done a lot of work in that domain. And when there was training happening around that, and I was talking to the ANMs around it, and I was like, "Is this helpful? How are you finding it?" So she was like, "दीदी पहली बारी तो मैं बता पा रही हूँ कि मैंने ये कर दिया है और जल्दी जल्दी वो इन्फॉर्मेशन पहुंच रही है एंड इट एंड और उनको पता है कि मैंने किया है, तो अगर मेरी कोई पेमेंट अटकी है तो जानते हैं मैं कर चुकी हूँ, वो पूछ भी सकते हैं लाभार्थी से कि मैंने किया है." It for the first time it was like, okay, even if she may be using the phone for the first time, and this was a relatively aged woman, so she was actually using a phone for the first time, she found value in what was given to her. So when we are thinking about designing such solutions, we need to be thinking about how can we make her life better,
right,
in whatever situation she is. The patient load is not reducing. Her care to be given, the expectations from the community she comes from is not reducing.
Right. So complement her in some way.
Her in some way, right? So similarly, the Ministry of Women and Child Development, they've rolled out an application called Poshan Tracker, which is being leveraged across all the Anganwadi workers.
Yeah.
And I think layering that and complementing, like you said, with the right kind of AI innovations would be really helpful to, streamline some of the work that, workers do. But we'll have to be very cautious of what we use them for.
Exactly.
For example, in one of the states, there is an LLM-powered chatbot that's being developed, keeping in mind the use case and the problem statements that the health workers, specifically the frontline workers in health, want to solve for. And, it's trying to answer questions around family health, sexual reproductive health, so that when they are doing their, they go for trainings, but when they come back, if they've forgotten, they can actually take, benefit of that.
Right.
But a lot of this, like we were talking about cultural context, has to be done in a way that's useful for them. So whether it is about language models, or whether it's about the domains that have been, the data sets that have been developed, they need to be very intentional for the purpose that we're actually leveraging for.
Right.
So, and I think that's where DPI's digital public infrastructure plays a very important role, right? So the work that the government is doing with Bhashini, there are multilingual models available.
Yeah.
Because you need to make these very conversational, colloquial, and that will require a lot of very rich data sets where women actually talk. So the speech diaspora there has been leveraged upon.
So like a friend for the frontline workers.
Absolutely. And similarly, even on the health side, with the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission rolled out by the government, I think it's a great initiative for us to actually leverage some of the building blocks that are being rolled out, whether it is Abha, whether it is the registries, to actually enable the care continuum holistically, right? So if you're looking at it from a citizen's perspective, the entire journey, but if you're looking at it from a doctor or somebody who's giving clinical advice, from their perspective, how can they have the right health records available based on consent to make an informed decision on treatment?
Exactly, yeah.
These can become fundamental building blocks on, tomorrow if you want to develop something from a clinical decision support system perspective, or if you want to actually improve lives. I think it'll take time for us to get there, but we have those foundational settings in place to leverage, whether it is AI. I know LLM has become the flavor of the season, but AI has so many different ways to be thought about it. But these are some of those building blocks work that India has been doing for a really long time, and the India Stack story talks about this. I think now is the time to truly leverage it and optimize on some of this with the advent of AI.
Exactly. And make it more complementary for the frontline workers to be able to use it and include it in their daily lives.
Absolutely. And go slow on it.
Yeah.
There's no rush. I think we should have evidence around it to say this is working for her.
Exactly.
I think in tech, forgetting the problem statement is where the problem starts.
Yeah.
You're not
very well put up, exactly.
You're not designing a tech solution to implement a tech solution.
Exactly.
You're designing an enabler which can benefit the frontline worker, in this case, as we're talking about, to benefit her.
Yeah.
If it is not something that's as easy as her to pick up as brushing her teeth, then it's a problem.
Exactly.
So that's what we need to be probably thinking about a little more actively, on how we can make it. Why I say brushing her teeth is, this is the example actually Anasha herself gave me.
Yeah.
I was in one state about 4-5 years back, and they had rolled out a digital health system for Ashas and ANMs both. And I was asking her, दीदी पहले तो नहीं था, पर अभी रजिस्टर भी थोड़ा थोड़ा इस्तेमाल करते हो, तो डिजिटल का क्या मतलब है? सो शी वाज लाइक, फोन तो मैं वैसे भूलती नहीं हूँ, पर जैसे ही उठती हूँ, ब्रश किया, मेरे फोन पे नोटिफिकेशन आ गई, आज ये करना है, देख लेते हैं.
Yeah.
So, so that's how intuitive it became for her. It's a part of her job, but at the same time, it was not feeling like a job because it was a job aid.
Right.
So
Right.
enabling those and strengthening those job aids becomes really important.
Right. That's how technology has become a part of our life, right? And it's like they are no different. For the frontline workers also, it's the same thing. Exactly. Having said that, new technologies do come up with new learning curves, right? So what would you suggest that how could we enable our systems to be better prepared for these upcoming technologies?
Yeah.
Can we work on developing the skills and the knowledge base of our systems, to better adopt and be able to streamline the uptake of these new technologies in our daily lives?
Yeah.
If you could share some thoughts on
No,
that.
absolutely. And thank you. I think that's literally the crux of everything, right? That you can develop everything, but if it's not used, what's the point of that?
Yeah, totally.
I think I'll start with the digital literacy itself, like fundamentally, right? If I'm taking a step back, that like we were mentioning, some of the users we're talking about maybe using devices for the first time, or maybe have used feature phones and are using smartphones for the first time. Multiple age groups, literacy levels may be varied. Comfort with using such a device,
A lot of diversity.
Yeah, and sometimes even even using a phone itself. So when I'm on the field, when we were doing trainings, and in my earlier roles as well, what we've seen is simple settings information that if you want to increase the font size,
Right.
how do you do it?
Yeah.
We miss teaching,
Yeah.
or somebody misses telling them that.
Yeah.
So the assumption for the user is that this is how it's going to be. So many times I've seen a lot of women picking up their specs, can't read, and I'm like, that's just a very missed opportunity. Some of them are first time users. If you don't get that right, it's just going to be harder and harder to. They're always going to be like, रहने दो, इसको रहने दो, मेरी notebook ही अच्छी है.
Exactly. So the feasibility and the comfort of the user, I think that's
the confidence, the technical proficiencies, they are very important. There is a fracking tool that's available, which is based on free works, roles, activities, assessments. Can we actually leverage something like that to build a digital competency building framework?
Absolutely.
For very specific for what that particular worker would need, but foundationally starting with how do you use a device?
Yeah.
If you and I were given a device for the first time, and if we go back in time, much more privileged section, but would we have wanted to do that for work or studies? Or the first thing we wanted to do was probably play something on a YouTube,
just explore it.
or explore on our own, right?
Yeah.
But if some of them have been given devices for work for the first time, we need to really equip them to understand what will be fun for them.
Exactly.
In that, right? So only then does it become a habit slowly in terms of, or become something that becomes comfortable and not something outside your comfort zone. So I think having some sort of digital competency building frameworks or dictionaries created, which are very specific to specific cadres, because different cadres have different educational levels, and so on and so forth. So I think that could be a starting point. I know 1 or 2 state governments who are actually testing some of that out as well. Then thinking about what we were alluding to earlier as well, around everybody will want different ways of actually inputting data or getting outputs from data.
Right.
And thinking about that accessibility very carefully also becomes important. Specifically in India, if we go beyond just the phones which have been given for work, if we look at the the numbers, 54% of the internet connectivity is actually used on low feature phone devices, etc. Right? So low configured devices. So that will result in bandwidth constraints. That will result in variable, internet connectivity.
All practical challenges.
All those practical challenges will come up, right? Plus, a lot of our workers move in very remote parts. So there may be connectivity, there may be intermittent connectivity at times. So when we're thinking about those, that has to be brought in. When you're thinking about developing an AI tool and layering on top of that, latency has to be thought of.
Totally, yeah.
If I don't get my output very quickly, I'll be like, ये तो चलता ही नहीं, छोड़ दो इसको.
Exactly, adopt ही नहीं करेंगे
तो फिर क्या फायदा हुआ मेरा? आपने तो मेरा काम बढ़ा दिया, ये तो मैं ऐसे निकाल के कर लेती.
Technology burden बन गई.
Totally, yeah. So those are the kind of things we have to think about very actively. I think the other thing to think about is bias in these data sets, right? When we are not having representative data sets which are not leveraging Indic languages, not representative of the the space or the geography they're coming from, have not been annotated from a bias perspective, it becomes a problem. So one of our partners, they're called Karya, they are actually working with women where they're making this a financial tool. And so what they're saying is, if you are actually going to input data, specific data, speech data, answering certain questions in certain domains, you'll be paid for that. You will actually be paid for that money. You will also help us then figure out what are the biases existing in data sets, test frameworks around that. And there are women's collectives who are actually testing some of this out as well. So that's the ground up I'm talking about. We can't sit here and figure out this is the data set, use it, plug it, play. It's not going to help.
It won't work, yeah.
It won't. And similarly, when we think in our ecosystems, when we think about engineering and, refining such tools and AI algorithms, and this was a very recent conversation I was having with one of the founders of a startup which is using AI in the legal system. And, one of the things he very kindly mentioned was that one of their early learnings when it hit him that, gender design has not come into their solutioning was, and it was an unintended concept.
Yeah.
It was not something that they did, because they didn't want to
by default.
But it was just a by default category option, right? So what happened was, when they were doing a lot of the prompt testing and prompt engineering on the data set, they had specific domain data sets for whatever they were working on, etc. But the engineers in that team, all 15 of them were men. And the prompts had to come in to actually train that data set to actually answer some. There was no woman in it.
Exactly. You can't be that creative thing.
And
you need a woman for that.
It has to be much more intuitive. And that's what I talk about. Where did the user go?
Yeah.
And then how did your user definition change somewhere along the way, right?
Exactly.
We just miss on some of those nuances.
So we do believe that AI has got immense potential in creating an impact in healthcare, right? But Anahita would like to hear your views and your experience regarding how receptive and welcoming have the stakeholders been for this upcoming technology? Probably the users or the policymakers. What has been your experience?
No, absolutely. I think we've just seen the launch of the Indian AI mission.
Yeah.
I think there is a very big outlay and budget allocated for that.
Yeah.
We haven't spoken about infrastructure compute costs, which become the biggest battle to fight for when we're thinking about AI. And I think the government is very thoughtfully thought about that as well. Thinking about the budget. We are talking about with the G20, there's a lot of conversation which has been happening on Make in India and make AI work in India.
Right.
And as we think about South-South collaboration on this sphere as well, in that context specifically, there have been a lot of benchmarks, data sets that are available. But in the LMIC context, in the Indian context, these are still to be designed for. Representation of Indic languages, the cultural context that we were talking about earlier in the conversation, the biases, the norms. I think those are the kind of things that we'll have to probably think about a lot more.
Right.
And I think a lot of steps actually around responsible AI are now being taken up very seriously. So there is a Center for Responsible AI at IIT Madras, which has been set up. People Plus AI is another organization which is trying to support some of these use cases. So I think from a use case perspective, if we segue from what is being done in the ecosystem at large, I think the market will also have a role to play.
Yeah.
But I think there is a responsibility for us to think about when we start thinking about use cases from a procurement perspective from the government. I think that's still a space we need to be thinking about a lot more around. If the government has standard procurement processes to follow, there will be an RFP release. So tomorrow, assume if they want to procure a clinical decision support system. Now the guidelines are constantly changing, whether it's the treatment protocols or there is a new drug introduced, or something has to be redefined or refined in terms of the guidelines. Now, who is responsible for ensuring that's getting reflected in the data set? Who is responsible for maintaining that code base? Who is responsible for verifying and validating on behalf of the government that it's absolutely on point, it's been updated, etc., so on and so forth, right? Who's helping the government make that decision? I think that's where some of the validation studies will be important. And I think that's where, for example, you all have developed this solution for anthropometry. And there is a study that you are now partnering with ICMR on. I think that's where it becomes important, that credible organizations, publications around this, and then thinking about some of those checks and balances. I think ICMR came out with the ethics guidelines.
Yeah, recently.
That was a very big and very important measure that was taken up. And I'm sure there'll be more happening with DEPA on the data protection, privacy, consent side. but we'll have to be a lot more thoughtful when it comes to how can the government actually procure them.
Right.
Otherwise, it'll create huge dependencies for the solutions, and they will not then be designed for the last mile, right?
Exactly.
And I think one of the ways maybe potentially we can think about it also is that there is also a center for excellence which is being set up by the Ministry of Education.
Yeah.
And there are 3 centers. One of them is health.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a game changer to your earlier question.
Yeah.
Because a lot of thinking around ensuring last mile access, solving for affordability, accessibility, the right kinds of brains will come together to think about that. Think about the representation we were talking about of the right people in the rooms to be able to solve for the right problems. I think so. Those are some of the enabling factors that I see are actually there in the ecosystem. It's very fascinating how we've suddenly seen this happen, but very proactive measures from the government have been taken, and AI has been there for years and years altogether.
Yeah.
It's more about how we're actually thinking about, much more thoughtfully about how it can be used going forward, and how do we think about it much more responsibly. I think that's where ecosystem partners like ours can play a role.
Totally. So it's a very evolving phase, and we have to be very supportive for our stakeholders to be able to adopt it in that manner. And thankfully, we have a lot of partners coming on field to support the government.
Absolutely.
So hoping for a bright future for AI in healthcare particularly.
Absolutely.
Great. So I think this has been really fantastic. So beyond AI, is there any advice that you would like to give to our listeners, especially our women listeners who are really passionate about creating impact in public health through technology?
Sure. I don't know about advice. That's a really loaded word. I don't think anybody really needs advice, but I think I got some advice recently. Let me start from there. So I was in a field visit about a week back, and I was trying to think about ways of how do you. So Abha has been created, like, so we all have our Ayushman Bharat Health ID. Many of us have created, but how do you inform a pregnant woman who's just stepped into the hospital who doesn't really have an understanding around some of these things because we've not really discussed them with it or its benefits?
Yeah, कि क्यों चाहिए?
क्यों चाहिए? Is it yet another ID?
Yeah.
बना रहे हो आप, right? So I was in one of the referral hospitals there, and that referral hospital has been fully digitized. So it was very fascinating. And very inspiring, frankly. So, there was a nurse there, super motivated, and she was having a conversation with this pregnant woman. And she was like, आप आभा बनाओगे? And she's like, मुझे आभा क्यों चाहिए? क्या होता है? किस लिए चाहिए होगा? And, this other nurse goes कि, अरे सुनो, जब तुम जाती हो, तुम लॉयर को इस्तेमाल करती हो ना, कभी कभी कुछ केस लड़ना होता है, तो उसको अपने सारे के सारे तुम डॉक्यूमेंट थमा देती हो ताकि वो ढंग से केस लड़े, पूरी जान लगा ले, उसका सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन हो। उसी प्रकार अगर आपको डॉक्टर को सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन देनी है तो कहाँ लाद के लेके जाओगी तुम अपनी फाइल? तो कहीं पे अगर चढ़ा पाई, ऑनलाइन कहीं चढ़ा पाई, तुम्हारे लिए अच्छा हो जाएगा, अच्छा हो जाएगा। इसीलिए आभा का प्रयोग कर सकती हो। I couldn't have thought of this.
Right.
This worked in their context.
Yeah.
Because she got convinced.
Yeah.
But then it followed. So she got convinced. She was like, ठीक है, तो क्या चाहिए उसके लिए बनाने के लिए? And then like, आभा के लिए आप आधार अपना दे दीजिए। अच्छा, ठीक है, दे दूंगी, है मेरे पास अभी। फिर उसके बाद अच्छा, तो फिर प्रोसेस क्या है? तो फिर OTP आएगा, आप OTP से मुझे अपना OTP नहीं दूंगी मैं, आप मेरे पैसे ले लोगे। And she was like, नहीं, explained it to her really well, right? I'm just like a witness on the side, right?
Totally.
So just standing what's happening, understanding how it's playing out, and then suddenly the A&M standing in the background said, दीदी ये फोन तो अपना नहीं लाई है, ये किसी और का फोन है, तो जिससे linked है वो तो है ही नहीं ना। Now, we saw a series of challenges and ground truths coming out.
Right.
We need to design for this.
Reality
Design to better enable that nurse on what she has actually a best practice she's established. How can we create more awareness around what are the kind of benefits? We need to design for the potential myths or concerns a user may have when they're thinking about leveraging digital. We need to design for how we can equip them with that information in the timely manner. So if tomorrow an A&M goes, she can actually create awareness around this if she has that to actually help her out. In addition to her training, she may have been taught in her training, but maybe she needs to refer to something. So much comes and unravels itself, right? So I think the only advice in my mind I carry is that you should have very grounded insights. Please go spend time in the field or with the users you're designing for. Don't think you know it. You don't. You will never.
Will never. Totally.
Will never. Right? I think too is we should just continue to be curious, tenacious, and I think women have a way of making it inclusive for diverse perspectives to come in, and I think that's really required. We spoke about norms, we spoke about bias. If we are not on the table, if we are not representing, if the data sets are not reflecting women from different populations and stratas of society, then we're not going to build for them. Then we're not going to solve for them.
Totally.
So we're, even before starting, we're excluding them. So I feel the more of us come out there, the more we will ensure that there are more voices heard from women. And I think that's the only thing I can nudge for, because some of the problems we've seen with AI solutions, whether it's bias or whether it's the representation or so on and so forth, or language or speech or having enough data sets in a domain, all of that, we need to be there. And I strongly urge women who are considering, some work in this field to just think about that. The more we are there, the more we'll bring others in. And the more diverse perspectives would come in. And that's what I learned in my field visit. So I got advice. But if it's useful for anybody, I think it'll be very useful for the ecosystem at large.
Totally agree with you, Anahita. Can't agree more, because when we are building technology, keeping all these perspectives, having that inclusivity is probably the key. Thank you. Thank you so much for these lovely insights, Anahita. I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
It's been a pleasure, Sneha. Thank you.
Our listeners must have also enjoyed it a lot, I'm sure. Thank you so much, and I deeply appreciate all the various perspectives and insights that you have shared. I'm sure it will encourage our different passionate women leaders working in this field to utilize technology more so for women and, for the healthcare. Thank you so much, Anahita.
Thanks, Neha. It's a pleasure. Thanks.
That wraps up our session on AI in healthcare. Hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for many more such exciting conversations ahead. Till then, goodbye.